What are your thoughts on consultants? And I ask this as a serious question because there are so many different various views of what a consultant is, how they're viewed, the value they provide, etc., etc. Now, there are some people who believe that consultants are a fantastic resource and they actually help organizations with big problems that they need help solving. But then there are other individuals who are like, actually, these individuals are just raking in the money. They don't even do anything. Like, we could do it ourselves. Now, it's interesting. That idea there is more centered for the bigger consultant. So we're talking about the top 5. I'm going to name them. You know who they are. But the point being made is there are 2 different camps. Now, for me, a consultant is someone who can strategically solve a unique problem for a target client or customer in a specified way. Okay, that's how they produce value. And so really for me, the fundamental question I think about is, why do organizations keep on hiring consultants? Now, of course, you can think to yourself, well, it's kind of obvious. It's nepotism, it's influence. They understand how the system works. It's a bit rigged, all of that kind of stuff there. I think that's all true. And there's a reason why, the government now wants to halve consultancy budget by half. I don't remember what the figures were. I don't know if it was 200 million. I don't even think it was a billion. I think it was 200 million or 400 million, should I say, went towards consultants in the last couple of years, or at least in the Conservative government. You can check out the statistics yourself. You can go into something like Perplexity to check it out. I should have done that before this. Anywho, the point being made is a lot of money is spent on them. But that doesn't necessarily fit or work for the solo one-man band or one-woman band consultant, okay? Such as people like myself. We don't necessarily have the hands or pockets of those individuals. Our route is more, okay, we've spoken to someone, we've gone through a bit of an interview process, we have to write a proposal, X, Y, and Z. There's no insider knowledge. There could be, but there isn't. Not for me, at least, anyway. And so with that in mind, what I start thinking about is that actually it's based on 2 things. Number one, it's how these consultants evidence the value that they provide. It's how they articulate it. It's how they talk about it. It's how they present it on their CV or portfolio or LinkedIn or whatever it may be, their website. Or 2, it really comes down to positioning. Where are they in the market? What sort of marketplaces are they on? Who are they speaking to? How do they present themselves? And so with that in mind, this is why consultants will always be around. I'm not talking about it's like this new thing that people need to jump on, all this kind of stuff. I'm just saying people are always going to find consultants valuable, whether that's from an organization standpoint or whether that's from a client sort of B2C standpoint, because of how they position themselves and how they articulate their value. Now, of course, when it comes to evidencing and articulating your value, that can only be done well if you've actually produced value. It's that simple. It's a hard exercise to do for many because they don't track what they do. But the point being made is the evidence. And you need to be able to be competent in what you're doing. So that would suggest years or quality training in what you've done. That's what it would suggest. Why am I saying all this stuff? Well, for me, given where we are right now in our current society, I believe that it's important for us to cultivate what is called the consultant mindset. That is the individual who can solve problems strategically, okay, or who have a strategic angle and has great problem solving skills, that has a proprietary or unique way of doing it. Of course, sometimes that unique way is just knowing how to deal with ambiguity and complexity. But it's the frameworks, it's the methodologies, it's the approach that is important. Not every framework and methodology is going to solve a problem. But at least it gives you a frame to think inside of or outside of, and so you can become a better problem solver. And so whether you are contracting or a consultant, a firm one or independent, or working a 9 to 5 for an employee, for an employer, should I say, it doesn't matter. The skills are still valuable because organizations, people deem consultants as useful, or at least they want their problems solved. This is why articulating and evidencing your value is so important, and also positioning yourself is key. And so really and truly, I want to talk about like some of the key qualities of that consultant mindset. So number one, they're outcome orientated. They're always thinking to themselves, what sort of outcomes am I going to produce? So there must be some sort of strategy or plan beforehand, some sort of benefits that need to be realized that they know they need to hit. And so if you're an expert, if you have a niche expertise, or you understand a certain way of how things work, you'll understand what you're looking for in terms of results. And the client will tell you this, but they will confirm what you already know, or what you think should happen, at least anyway. Sometimes it's out of that realm, but the point being made is they focus on the outcomes that the client wants. That is their goal. So they're not thinking about anything else. That's the first thing. Second thing is they know how to work with people. You have to be somebody who understands how to communicate well. And I talk about this in some videos I've done many moons ago. Okay. This is all centered around emotional agility, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, all this kind of stuff. This really requires you to have the inner work, to have the self-awareness, to gather data around you, to understand how you respond to different things and how you manage those responses in order to get what you want, but also using that sort of information to understand how others operate as well, and using things like leadership, negotiation, influence, conflict management, all this kind of stuff to work with people. Is understanding that, yes, there is going to be professionalism that is required, okay? But also there's going to be the softer skills, the more informal stuff where you're not just having transactional relationships where it's like, hey, how's it going? Yeah, not too bad. You? End of. I don't understand those things, I hate that. I hate it when it happens with friends or whatever it may be. They need to be more transformational, at least leaning towards that. So it's not just talking about, who's done what and X, Y, and Z, or talking about an event. It's talking about the ideas as well, and making sure that people feel heard, using the right level of powerful questions, using the right level of, active listening, okay, or deep listening, using the right level of feedback and coaching, mentoring mechanisms, all this kind of stuff. So people skills are big for that. We also want to move on to this space of agility and adaptability. Now, I want to say something very quickly here. Sometimes I speak to project managers, or I speak to people who are working within the operations or the business as usual. And I ask them what kind of approach do they have, and they're like, oh, we have an agile approach. And then when I'm there for a couple of weeks or months, I'm realizing that agile means just lack of discipline. Okay, that's what it means. It means that actually it's kind of casual, it's not agile. Agile is a specific approach that people use. And as my program director said, who's also a consultant, he was basically saying that actually, no, it's extremely disciplined. And I've seen that myself. As a senior implementation manager working for, I think it was NHSX at the time, Agile was very disciplined. You need to hit your goals when it comes to your sprints. You need to ensure you understand what the Scrum Master is saying. You need to prepare for your show and tells or whatever it may be. There's a certain approach to it. There's a framer. But you can still be adaptable having discipline. You can still be agile having discipline. And so it's not, sorry about the noise by the way, it's knowing exactly how to be and how to respond when it comes to this different stuff. Okay, so you need to be able to get data on a regular basis that enables you to understand how to make decisions. So it's your decision making ability that is going to be crucial here, nothing else. How you make decisions. Now, of course, we make decisions based on our values, what we deem as important. Okay, so that's going to be crucial. But also we need to make decisions based on what I would say the strategy, the approach of what the client wants. If we think about this, strategy is essentially the approach that you take. It's the way you do things based on the information that you've gathered, because it's broken down into three different things: strategic analysis, strategic planning, and strategic implementation. But that analysis bit comes from information. That information comes from the deliverables that are being met when it comes to the program or project or the operations that you're working in. It comes from feedback from different people. It comes from the strategy or policies that you look at. It comes from data that you crunch and analyze. It comes from the customers that you talk to. That's how you become agile. You listen to the conditions of the market. So hopefully that makes sense when it comes to that. There's also continuous learning. So you can't be safe as a consultant. You can't be, because AI is coming through. There's some new young buck who's coming in trying to take over. There's the big firm consultant who blah, 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 whatever. You need to have a way to consistently learn. And so if you can't do the vocational qualifications and studies and all that kind of stuff there, then really it comes down to, well, what am I learning from my job right now? What are the key things that I'm learning? Maybe it's how you're dealing with different types of people. Maybe it's how you deal with academics. Maybe it's how you, again, develop a certain type of documentation. I'm in a season where I'm reviewing a lot of project briefs and project initiation documents. Now, I've done it before, but for like this moment round, like I'm doing it quite a lot. And so I've almost kind of memorized what a project brief looks like off the top of my head, which means that when it comes to project delivery for the program that I run, it's very clear what I'm looking for. If it doesn't have a specific purpose or specific objectives or success criteria or clear and key milestones and deliverables that are not just the same, etc., then I know that it hasn't been set up properly. If it doesn't have the right governance, if it doesn't have a project executive who is holding accountability for that project, again, I know that's not going to work. So you have to find ways in which you learn. It doesn't have to just be vocational stuff. It can be what you're learning on a job. And so what I personally do is there's something called voice notes, okay? Now, I'm not talking about the voice notes in your phone. This is an AI application where I can just record my voice. Straight after it's done, it will transcribe that, and then it can summarize things, it can do whatever. So I've been using it as a form of journaling. Now, I got it quite early. I paid one-off for it. I think it was £50 one-off because I trusted in the vision. This is something I've been looking for a couple of years, if I'm honest with you. And so that was an opportunity I grasped. But now I think there's a monthly fee of $5.99 or something like that. If I remember, I'll put the link in the comments below so you can check it out for yourself. That's how I journal at the moment. Well, part of the way I journal. So that's another thing you need to do. Following on from that, I've said this already, but it's a point that's on my notes. There is a client-centric focus, okay? Now, look, there's a fine line between this because at the end of the day, you should have jurisdiction over how you feel and what you do. However, in the world that we live in, especially if you're a consultant-esque individual, what the client says in terms of what needs to be delivered needs to be understood and adhered to. Now, I'm not telling you to bend over. Okay, what I am telling you to do though is to ensure that you understand the requirements and you're clear that you can deliver on those things and you communicate effectively with that client, okay, or your employer or your manager or your boss, what you can and can't do. Has to be sensible, mature conversations. Now, of course, this is not always the case for everyone. There are some, managers or clients that aren't favorable. They're annoying. They're a bit prickish by nature. You have to make a decision. Do you go elsewhere? Do you stay where you are? Is there a strategy that you need to employ? Again, this is why you need to know what you're doing for yourself. But the point being made is there has to be an understanding. Now, you understand this fundamentally, not just based on your expertise and all that kind of stuff there, but you understand their pains. What pains are you trying to solve for them? I know we hear about this within the business space where they're like, oh, understand the customer's pains and blah, blah, blah. And all that. It's the same thing within the career space. Understand it. So the way I do this is I don't just speak to the hiring manager. I don't just speak to, the lead or whatever it may be. I speak to people on the ground. I like to understand what's happening. How have they done this there? And then very quickly, I know what the big program objectives are, but I know if there's a culture issue or a leadership issue or a governance issue or a project controls issue, it's quick to see. And so I can nip that in the bud straight away because of the capacity of what I do as a program manager within a consulting space independently. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, of course, when it comes to the consultant mindset, it builds certain things. So one thing it does build is resilience. Of course, if you actually are a consultant, if you actually are a contractor, okay, freelancer, whatever it may be, if you're not reliant upon an employer, you have to be resilient, which means you have to be a person who plans well, who has a financial focus, understands money and how it operates, understands how you apportion your activities, energy, and time. All of this stuff is really important. For me, resilience is built when you understand what your values are. And those values are determined based on the context that you have in your life. Context, the reason for being, d'autres raisons, if I've said that right for anyone who's French speaking. What is your reason for being? I know this seems very high in the sky, but this all relates to the consultant mindset because resilience is key. Focus on the solutions, understand the problems, focus on tackling those things. Use first principles to understand and address how does this need to be tackled if you don't have a methodology or framework to work with, okay? But luckily we have things like AI to support us when it comes to the thinking so we can leverage that stuff. When it comes to, again, the consultant mindset and adopting this stuff, it means that we have the ability to enhance our value proposition. What did I say at the beginning? This is why I said what I said at the beginning. Organizations and people see consultants as valuable, whether you agree with that or not. And some of you may agree, but not want to agree. But that's what it is. I'm not saying it. The stats are saying it. The stats are saying it. And so with that in mind, it positions you a certain way. Okay, so if you're ever thinking about how do I position myself, think about what problems do you solve? Who specifically do you help? What do you specialize in and how do you help solve those problems? And maybe any additional benefits that you provide. And so that specifically is clear. What I'm recognizing, okay, over the years is that when you are clear about what you do or an aspect of what you do, okay, because I understand we do many things, then you put yourself in a position where people are drawn to you and everyone else is drawn out. For example, there'll be people watching this right now who fundamentally disagree with my channel, what I said, etc., etc. That's okay. That's kind of the aim, because I want to draw in the people who do understand and who do resonate with this stuff. I'm not trying to sell a pipe dream or anything. I'm just talking about my ideas. That's what I'm doing here. And so with that in mind, it enhances your value proposition. It crystallizes you as an individual and enables people to be curious and understand and want to know more about that thing. That's how it works. That's another thing that this consultant mindset does. The other thing is it fosters this whole idea of collaboration, because you are in this space of wanting to solve problems. You're going to have to work well with people, and you're going to have to work with people anyway. They're going to have ideas. They're going to have the knowledge. They're going to have the skills that you will need to lean on in some situations to enable things to happen and enable things to work. And so with that in mind, like, it's key that this happens in terms of developing your emotional intelligence to foster this collaboration. But that's what it does. It allows that because you're more open to working with people. You understand, I have a problem solving mindset. Therefore, it makes sense to speak to this person, that person, X, Y, and Z. Okay. The other thing is, naturally, it drives personal growth. And what I'll say to that is, if we think about it, many of us have never adopted this before. No one's taught us to be consultants. Of course, for those of you who are watching this who are firm consultants, you would have had years, maybe months, but definitely years of training, okay, of understanding exactly what clients want and need and how you solve those specific problems. But for many of us, we never had that training. I didn't have that training, okay, but I've managed to put myself in a position where I'm actually an independent consultant. Why? It's because I leaned and learned the stuff from previous experience, 10/11 plus years of the NHS, working with some of these people, but not really, and understanding how to fulfill certain things to my employer, to my manager, whatever it may be. I've just brought that in. And so it teaches you stuff, how you want to be, how you need to act, what you need to develop and learn. I mean, the fundamental, for me, fundamentally, the way I improve as a person is I answer these questions. What went well? What didn't go well? What do I want to do about the things that didn't go well? It's that simple. Keep it moving. Because the things that are going well, you just keep on doing those things if it's valid. What didn't go well, okay, that is determined by the market, your hiring manager or whatever it may be. And then you need to assess, okay, what do I need to do differently? Is it still relevant? That's how you grow as a person. It's the reflection and answering those questions and acting upon those different things. If you think about it, remember what I said at the beginning: strategy, analysis, planning, implementation. Anyway, let's move on. Finally, it also aligns you with future work. Okay, so this is another sort of like benefit of having the consultant mindset, because you're positioning yourself well, you're branding yourself well, you're putting yourself in a space where you are able to, again, garner those opportunities, attract those opportunities. Okay, so it's about being dynamic by nature and understanding actually the world is changing and actually I need to be in this seat. So again, I don't think I need to go for anything else. I'm looking through my notes and I'm like, yeah, I've kind of said all this stuff already, so there's no point. But the take-home message is there is value in having the consultant mindset. It's not a bad thing. Okay, I understand there are some firm consultants that, yeah, they do shady things. Okay, I can't confirm that, but I can only imagine that is the case because nepotism and influence is real. But pushing that aside, for the solo sort of consultant, okay, independent one, they get opportunities based on how they evidence their value, okay, which means they have to be competent and they've taken work to look at how they've delivered value, but two, how they position themselves, where they're positioned, their personal branding, who they speak to, etc., etc. And people working for an employer can adopt the same thing, whether they're looking for an exit, whether they're looking for a promotion, whether they just want to be better in what they do. It's how you track, manage this stuff. It's how you employ certain frameworks and methodologies aligned to what you do. It's the understanding that you have. It's how you understand strategically how you're solving a specific problem. So hopefully that has helped in giving you some insights. If you want to see more videos centered around portfolio careers, consulting, contracting, leadership, life management, whatever, okay? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.